Hey guys, what's going on? Today's video, I wanted to go over a deck that has been in the game for a long time at this point, but has sneakily started to become one of the more consistent and stronger decks high in the meta, and that is a Hela list. And surprisingly enough, she is winning at a very high win rate in a lot of her lists, and I've spent the last few days really tinkering around trying to get a good list out here for you guys. And this deck list is winning consistently over 68% of the time for me. And it's working really well because there are a lot of options in the game at this point of very high powered cards. And there are good ways now to ramp out consistently. And even when you're not drawing well, the cards like Black Knight introduced into the game can produce immense power without actually needing to play the high power cards. And this deck is doing so well, you don't even have to draw Hela and play her to win. There is a ton of ways to produce a ton of power, and people are not going to be able to compete with it, especially because you're not worried about a filled out deck list with all the Infinity Stones and a Thanos type list that you would be running Lockjaw or Jubilee in. So without further ado, let's get into the Get Hela Wins deck. And first off, in the must-haves, we have Black Knight, and he has been buffed and obviously has become a much better card because of the Ebony Blade not being able to be destroyed or have its power reduced, and it works extremely well in this deck. He can, at worst case, he's going to be a token for you to trigger your Lockjaw to try to get some of your more powerful cards out, but you're going to find a ton of consistency in getting at least one discard off with your Blade or Lady Sif, and or whatever other discard card you're deciding to run, and usually you're going to get at least 9 power, and that's worst case scenario probably. That's just you getting your automatic Black Cat trigger while your Black Knight is out there. And I have Blade as a must-have just because he is a very cheap discard option, and we're not running a ton of discard in this deck because there's going to be a lot of options for you to ramp out cards, so you don't need as much discard. And having a 1/3 is always a good value, and he is a great opportunity to be a Lockjaw token as well, and he works very nicely in that aspect, so I like to have Blade in there as a cheap discard option. And I'm going to lump in Lockjaw and Jubilee into together right here because they're serving the same purpose in this deck. They're both ways for us to ramp out and get our higher valued cards out quicker into the game. Obviously Lockjaw, you need the tokens to work with, but you can even combine the Lockjaw and Jubilee, as many people know, and that can create immense power on turn 4 on one lane. And there's not really any other great ways in the game right now to ramp out power quickly that you want, so both those cards work very well in this deck with a lot of higher cost cards that we have that we want to get out there. And additionally, because we're not running the MODOK Hela list, there are a good consistencies even if we get unlucky and pull Hela out with our Lockjaw or our Jubilee early, that we've already discarded something, so we're going to get some value still, and we have enough powerful cards later in the game that we don't have to just give up on the game immediately if our Hela comes out early. And I have Lady Sif as a must-have because she is a very consistent discard in this deck, and we have a ton of 6 cost in this deck that are always going to be a target for Lady Sif to discard, so I like to have her rather than some of the other discard options. Like, don't really run a Colleen Wing because you're not going to discard everything consistently that you would want, and obviously Moon Knight is a shot in the dark a lot of the times. And this deck really highlights how strong Dracula is as a card still. He kind of fell out of the meta a ton, and he even received a buff to go to a 4/1, which honestly, you would be shocked how many people lose the game because they're accounting for an infinite 20 power, and then you get 1 extra power and it's 21, and they lose that lane. He's very consistent. He's always going to have something very strong to discard out of your hand. It's just a matter, you have to have a lottery roll essentially a lot of the times for him to hit the best stuff, but you can usually get a lot of the lower cost, lower powered cards out of your hand, so Dracula is going to hit something good. And obviously, even if you can't end up playing the Ebony Blade, it becomes another target for your Dracula to hit later and discard. And I like having Black Cat as a must-have in this list because she is a guaranteed discard no matter what. You're going to be able to draw her, and when she's drawn, she's either going to be a trigger for your Black Knight, and you're going to get a 4/9 Ebony Blade at worst case, and which is still a pretty good card, and it can't be destroyed. And obviously, she works extremely well with Hela. She's going to be a guaranteed discard that you already had that you didn't have to worry about making yourself discard, and your Hela is going to bring her back. And even if you get an early Hela out and Black Cat comes out early, she's not a Shang-Chi target, which is very important and keeping you powerful and winning lanes. And obviously, this being a Hela deck, Hela is a must-have, and she's an extremely powerful card right now because of the fact that she brings back all these cards, and you have great ways of discarding select cards in this deck, so you know you're going to bring out value no matter what. So it's important to kind of be strategically filling up your lanes so you can, in a way, control a little bit where your Hela rerolls are going to land. But even worst case scenario, you have a Hela, the only card you're going to bring back is Black Cat. That's still a 6/15 worth of power, which is extremely good, and that really only happens once out of every few games if you're going to Hela and only get Black Cat. Most of the time you're bringing back 2 or 3 cards, and she has a ton of value, and your opponent can't predict where the stuff is going to go, so it makes it that much harder to play against, and you're going to see a lot of retreats when people know you've set up a strong Hela, and you're just going to win in steel cubes. And Magneto is a must-have because he is just such a powerful on-reveal effect, and he's got a pretty good stat line at 612, and a lot of the times your opponent's just not going to be able to account for the movement that Magneto is going to cause, so he's just going to probably steal you some cubes a lot of the time because there's a lot of unknowns that your opponent just can't account for with the Magneto being played. And finally, the Infinite is the last must-have in my opinion, just because of the insane stat line he has. 620, obviously there's not anything in the game that competes with that, except maybe the Blob sometimes can get bigger than that now. But obviously, he's never going to be played out of your hand unless you get leeched, but he is usually going to get pulled out at some point by your Lockjaw or your Jubilee, and easy target to be discarded, and your Hela will bring him back, and that's just an immense amount of power that your opponent's going to have to know they're going to have to beat in a lane. So he works out extremely well, and he's in the list for his sheer power. And moving on to the flex, the good thing about this deck is you are trying to target a lot of gigantic cards to discard to eventually bring back with your Hela, so there are a ton of flex options, and you can kind of do a ton of with this deck and push it into kind of the more niche archetype you want it to be. That being said, I personally don't like running Ghost Rider in it because I think there is enough consistency with Hela being drawn and just the amount of power you can produce without your Ghost Rider being needed. So he is definitely a flex option because you are going to have targeted strong discard out there. So he does bring value bringing back cards in, and if you're getting really frustrated and not drawing Hela a ton, he obviously is a good medium for that. And I like having Doc Ock as a potential flex in this list because he provides so much disrupt to the opponent's deck, and obviously the 5/10 stat line is extremely good. Obviously a lot of the time he just pulls out Shang-Chi and he dies, but you get to empty out your opponent's hand a lot of time, which can be very helpful in this list. So I don't think there's bad value in getting Doc Ock pulls earlier in the game, especially when he gets Lockjawed or Jubileed out. So he can provide a lot of value at a premium stat line. And I have She-Hulk in here as a potential flex card as well because obviously she's a 6'10", pretty good stat line. So if she gets pulled out from your Lockjaw or Jubilee, you're never really upset. And there are some games when you're not drawing great and it doesn't feel like you're playing very smooth turns. You're not being energy efficient, so there will be times where you're going to have cost reduction available and you're going to get that She-Hulk out there for cheaper, and she can help you out, maybe reduce your scar for a play. So she's generally a pretty strong card in a lot of decks like this where you're trying to cheat cards out, and there might be some stale turns. And if you've been watching my channel lately, you know I love Scar, and I think this is another deck list that he fits perfectly into. There's always a chance you're going to ramp out a bunch of 10 power or more cards early, so he's going to have cost reduction in your hand. And even if he's one of the cards that you do pull out early with your Lockjaw Jubilee, 611 is a good stat line. He's just a solid card in this list, and I can't really find a reason not to include him, especially if you're going for the more ramp efficient plays. And Giganto fits into the flex because he is another card that just has a premium stat line. There's not really many cards in the game that really can compete with his stat line, so I like to have him in this list for obviously getting pulled out by your Lockjaw, your Jubilee, or being brought back with Hela. He's got a premium stat line for that case, and if you're strategic about how you're playing cards, like putting your Jubilee and your Lockjaw not in the left lane, if you already have your Giganto in your hand, a 614 in the left lane can actually win you a lot of the times on turn 6, so don't sleep on Giganto. And finally, I have Death as a flex card because, once again, she has an immense amount of power at 12, so she fits nicely as a card to be pulled out with your Jubilee, your Lockjaw, brought back with your Hela. And also, the meta is extremely destroy heavy still, so there's a lot of the times that you're going to draw her, she's going to be in your hand, and your opponent is just going to get her down to 0 cost for you, so she's just going to be a free 0-12 a lot of the time when you're playing destroy. So I think she's a pretty good flex option in this list. So guys, that is the Get Hela Wins deck list. Let me know what you think. Go out there, win some games, steal some cubes. At the point of the video, I want to remind everybody to like, comment, and subscribe. There's still over 95% of the people who are watching this channel are not subscribed. I'd appreciate it if you could hit that button for me. But without further ado, let us get into some of the infinite gameplay for you guys. And first off, we have WGSB here. And Black Cat is never a bad card to have in your opening hand, just because you know you're going to get that guaranteed discard. And Lady Sif is nice to just have as well. And Mojo World is not terrible. And Project Pegasus is pretty big. Getting us extra energy out early is never a bad thing. I don't really want to play any of these 6 drops right out of my hand. I'd rather take the role of Lady Sif and Jubilee and Mojo World, and it might just scare him away from being able to win the game in the middle lane. And that's good. Lady Sif didn't hit Hela for us, which is always a good thing. Jubilee brings out the Black Knight for us, which is not... we're not working with a lot of power in the middle lane right now, unfortunately. But luckily for us, we have Hela in our opening hand. And I'm going to throw Dracula into the negative zone here because we don't care. He's going to gain power at the end of the game. And at this point, I'm going to snap because I have a lot of potential power here with Hela coming out. He goes ahead and he's going to throw out a Nakia. Really not thinking that's going to do much here. And this is another good turn for us here. We're going to Lockjaw into Blade. Should pull a pretty good card for us here. And it's going to give us an Ebony Blade of 12 power, getting rid of that Magneto. And Magneto is just another great pull for Hela to bring back onto the board for us. He's going to fill up Mojo World with a Psylocke and a Wolf's Bane. So we are looking for a pretty good pull here into our Mojo World for us to win with power. And Giganto on the right lane is huge for us here. So I'm going to go ahead and play Hela into the left lane here just to get more power. There's a good chance I'm going to win the left lane. Hopefully one of the cards we pull back with Hela is going to bring power to the middle lane. And at this point, he's probably thinking about whether he's going to be retreating or not. Because there is a lot of power on our side of the board. Really thinking about it. He's going to Black Panther onto the left lane, which should not be enough power for him to be winning this game. Yep. Black Cat, Magneto, and we get our Ebony Blade discard for our Dracula, so that is an easy victory for us there. Not really sure what deck this guy is playing. And next up we have Enough Human. Upset with Society. Elysium's not bad for us. We'll have to see what his type of list is before we really react, but makes this opening hand much better. Strange Academy doesn't really do anything for us. So we're just gonna Lockjaw here. Left. And it's gonna set up our Lady Sif for the next turn. Green Goblin into a Sunspot. Lehigh into a Juggernaut. Interesting. I'd rather play Lady Sif here. I got a 33% chance of not. Only 33% chance we're going to lose Hela, which is some of the better odds you're going to have with your Lady Sif in this list, so we're going to go ahead and do that cycle. And of course it's Hela, but it's not the end of the world, honestly. We're okay with that. Now that does stink, but we can still work through it. I'm going to go ahead and throw Dracula down into the right lane here. Thing. Into a Scorpion. Doesn't really matter to us. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull Thing and Viper over here. Potentially lock down this lane a little more for us. And that works nicely for us to win the left lane. Because now our Giganto is going to stay with that Black Knight. And we have to rely on the 50-50 roll here for our Dracula. Jubilee's a terrible hit there, but that's why we had Giganto. And our Dracula hits Star Infinite and it wins us the right lane. So that's another victory there, even with a unfortunate lottery roll. And next up we have Yohimbe. And I like seeing my Black Knight in the opening hand here, but I'm going to hold on to him until turn 2. Because there's not likely to be any other turn 2 play for me, and the off chance he had something to destroy it. And honestly, I don't mind 2 Black Knights on the board because I will get 2 Ebony Blades, which are just a higher likelihood that this Dracula could discard him. Two Zabus is not very fun for us, but we'll be okay. I'm gonna go ahead and Lockjaw into the raft here. And I would like 2 copies of Dracula out there, so I'm just going to Dracula into my Sinister London location here. And then we got Wong. It's unfortunate that that Wong didn't second hit into nowhere, but we will live. And there's the Hela we wanted. we really don't want Jubilee to hit the Raft and Sinister London, so we can't Hela. So I'm gonna just go ahead and, well, actually, not the end of the world. No, we want to get as much value out of Sinister London as we can. We're gonna just blade there. And now I can Hela to bring back Black Cat. Is that more powerful than us? Yeah, we're gonna do that. He Odin's the Medusa. I may win him the middle, but that's an unfortunate turn of events for us there. But it worked out in the end. Still just so much power being produced from Dracula and Hela. And finally here we have easy pumps. And Lady Sif Jubilee is never a bad opening hand. Monster Metropolis is probably a location we can win, so we will be able to play on that location. Nightcrawler on turn 1. Into a sewer systems, another pass here. We have 2 good Lady Sif targets in our hand right now. It's Forge, so some kind of bounce deck, most likely. I'm just gonna throw Lady. I'm gonna throw Lady Sif onto the Avengers compound, and I'm probably gonna Jubilee on the Metropolis next turn. Alright, Magneto is a fine hit, and we get that Black Cat discarded, so now we really just need to draw Hela, and we're in really good shape. And there she is. We're going to go ahead and I'm not going to Jubilee here, just on the off chance we get Blade. I really don't want to get Hela discarded, so we'll just throw down our Dracula in the left lane here. And look at that, good thing we didn't, because that Blade would have been drawn and we would have lost our Hela. So we're just gonna go Jubilee here. Can't play Blade, we're not gonna go, I do not want to give up Hela. Alright, into the Infinite. It's quite good for us. And I'm just gonna play Hela mid here. And we're gonna get back Magneto and Black Cat, which is pretty good value. And hopefully, and that is it. Another victory right there. So guys, that was the Get Hela Wins deck and some high level infinite gameplay, a little breakdown for you. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you let me know in the comments. I'm interested to see how many people get all the way through the end. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.